Welcome to Oslo on this bitterly cold January morning, where I've decided to take a 1.5 hour tour of the Oslofjord on a sightseeing cruise. Am I crazy? Time will tell. Oslo is a city I know really, really well. It's the first place I lived when I moved to Norway, way back now. It's also somewhere I come regularly to visit, whether it's to see my football or hockey team play, or just for a city break like I'm doing this weekend. But it's very rare I get to experience the city from the water, which is why I've made this last minute decision to join this trip today. Just before we get started, please do check out lifeinnorway.net for more on Oslo and all things Norway in English. Now, let's get out on the water. It was a crisp January morning and the temperature read -13. As I stared out from my hotel room at the mist hovering over the islands and the ice, I almost had second thoughts. Still, I went ahead with my plan anyway, for YouTube. I booked my ticket online just 45 minutes before departure. It was 410 Norwegian kroner for the first departure of the day at 10 AM. And even in January, there were a couple more departures available later in the day. Of the options available, I chose the one operated by the Fjords. Their electric ferries had left an impression on me during a recent trip to Flum, where they glide silently along the fjords. Also, this cruise departed from near the Opera House, a short walk from my hotel, rather than the Aker pier, where most of the other trips leave from. That was definitely a consideration given the temperature. Several other options are available from Aker, including trips on historic vessels, so do check out all of the other providers to pick the one that's right for you. From the promenade, I spotted the ferry docked on the opposite side of the harbour. Making my way around the water's edge, I stumbled upon a delightful surprise, Oslo's latest cultural trend, the Fjord saunas. These complexes have become a hallmark of the area in recent years, offering a quintessentially Nordic experience in the very heart of Norway's capital city. Have you ever taken a fjord sauna in Oslo? Let me know in the comments. By the way, if you enjoy these videos, please do check out Life in Norway on Patreon. Backers get early access to all my videos and exclusive Norway travel tips from yours truly, a travel writer who has lived in Norway for 14 years now. Now, let's explore the Vision of the Fjords. Boarding the Vision of the Fjords was remarkably quick and seamless. A simple scan of the ticket on my phone and I was on board. My first impression? Quiet. Eerily quiet. With only about 25 passengers on a vessel designed to comfortably accommodate 10 times that number, and the official capacity is around 400, it was clear I was in for a relaxed journey. The interior design is reminiscent of a fjord ferry, but it has more spacious seating areas, including lounges on 2 internal decks. You'll find a small cafe serving hot and cold drinks and snacks, including chocolate, crisps, and pulser Norwegian hot dogs. There's beers available from a local Oslo brewery, which is a nice touch, but as it was so early in the morning and so cold, I just settled for coffee. What I loved most about the vessel is these outdoor areas. With a design reminiscent of the Oslo Opera House, guests can walk outside from the main deck and then up the sloping sides of the vessel, all the way to the top. This very Scandinavian feel provides a huge amount of outdoor space all around the vessel. The large windows also let people enjoy the scenery from the comfort of the lounges. They're a big plus on a day like this. Now, although I didn't spend huge amounts of time outside due to the cold, I did keep popping in and out when there was something I wanted to see a little closer or film. The design of the ship meant it was quick and easy to get where I wanted to be. Having experienced electric ferries in Norway many times before, they're practically unavoidable these days, I thought I knew what to expect. But as a sightseeing vessel, Vision of the Fjords offered something very special, near total silence. Technically a hybrid electric vessel, but the only engine noise I noticed was during the brief moments we pulled away from the harbour and then returned. Once the batteries took over, the experience transformed into a peaceful glide across the fjord. The absence of engine noise allowed the natural sounds of the surroundings to shine, a wonderful way to appreciate the sights. How silent it would feel with 400 people on board is another question entirely. One unique aspect of the Fjord's sightseeing experience is the absence of any live commentary. Instead, passengers are invited to download an app that provides a free audio tour. For me, this was a welcome innovation, and most of the other passengers seemed content with it as well. That said, I do wonder how this concept fares during peak season. Would crowded decks mean passengers without headphones play audio out loud, shattering the silent atmosphere? I don't know. Thankfully, on this trip, there was no such disruption. Seeing some of Oslo's major landmarks from the water offers a fresh perspective, even if you've explored them on foot. The journey began with two of Oslo's most iconic modern structures fading into the distance: the striking angular Oslo Opera House and the controversial facade of the Munch Museum. Soon we approached the historic Akershus fortress. From this vantage point, the medieval walls and towers really stood out against the city's skyline. From the water is the best way to appreciate the fortress's grandeur. As we continued, the former shipyards of Akerbrygge and Tjuvholmen came into view. These bustling waterfront districts are now home to promenades, upscale dining, and contemporary art galleries. We then cruised past the bustling dock for the ferry to Denmark, a site that has sparked a mental note. I absolutely must try the mini cruise to Denmark someday. This route is a favourite among Danes and Oslo locals, and visitors alike. As we continued, we approached the Bugdøy Peninsula, a leafy haven famed for its wealth of museums. The striking triangular silhouette of the Fram Museum came into view, standing out prominently as we sailed past. From Bugdøy, we turned out into the fjord and headed towards the islands of the Oslofjord. Here, the number of pleasure boats was a surprise, even in the winter, when many of them are moored for the season. Norway has been a world-leading boating nation since Viking times, when Norsemen spread fear and unrest far and wide. According to the tour commentary, there are 1 million pleasure boats in Norway, which equates to a boat for every 6th person. I love exploring the islands of the Oslofjord. Having taken the ferries to the islands several times before, it was nice to be able to tour around many of them from the water. Highlights of the journey included the beach and nature reserve of Hovdøy, the colourful vacation cottages dotting the shores of Lindøy and Gressholmen, an island with a fascinating history as the former site of Oslo's seaplane airport. Although I've sailed to and from the islands before, there were some highlights of the inner Oslofjord that were new to me, making the trip a worthwhile one. As we approached the inner lighthouse, the sight of its elegant white tower perched on the rocky islet sent me scurrying out onto the deck, braving the sharp winter air once again. Built in 1874, its storied history seemed to emanate from every weathered surface, from the fog bell to the keeper's quarters. With the icy wind biting at my cheeks and my hands, I couldn't help but imagine the resilience of the lighthouse keepers who once called this tiny, windswept outpost home. We also learned the story of a German cargo ship which sailed past this point in November 1942 with 532 unsuspecting Norwegian Jews on board. 3 years later, the ship was sunk by resistance heroes Max Manus and Roy Nilsen outside of Drøbak, a little farther south along the fjord. The 90-minute journey seemed to pass in the blink of an eye, and before I knew it, we were gliding back into the heart of the city. As the familiar skyline came into view, we approached Vippetangen, a historic port and trading area, but today it's home to Vippe, a waterfront food hall that I visited a few years ago, but had totally forgotten about since then. Another visit is long overdue. As I left the ferry, I was surprised to find a group of people already waiting to board the next departure at midday. It was only 11:30, so they had half an hour to wait. As the boat had to be cleaned and prepared for the next departure before boarding could commence, they faced a long wait out in the cold. And that brings me to the end of my 1.5-hour winter cruise on the Oslofjord. It's been a very, very cold hour and a half, but it's been well worth it. You can see the ship there just behind me. And what an icy welcome it was back to Oslo. You don't often see ice lying in the Oslofjord like this, but it is -12, so fair enough. If you're planning a trip to Oslo, check out this video next to my recommendations on the best things to see and do here in the Norwegian capital. And as always, thanks for watching.